we met, she did this, we launched the speaker series right before COVID and then everything online, so we did something together like 2 years ago. So we'll be in here. What we do is, and Megan, we'll have people joining in here. It's basically Zoom, LinkedIn Live. Hey, Megan.
Hi.
Who's logged in. And do you have slides? You want to share a couple?
I have some slides just in case.
Okay, so you could actually log in. We've met before, Michael, right?
Yeah, how are you?
What's your
Galetta.
Galetta? Okay. Oh, Michael, right? That's our moderator. Okay, this is the moderator.
Okay, cool.
You know, I saw you sitting there. This is Masayo.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Mike. Mike's first year.
Yeah, first year medical student.
Okay, so he just moderated a session last week with a speaker from Humana.
Okay.
Have you been to Think Box before?
I haven't. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. You have a couple slides you'll
Yeah,
share.
just in case we.
Okay.
I mean, if the questions don't go in that direction. it's
Okay.
Sure.
Well, we could just, I mean, whatever you want, you can log in and share your screen if you want to share a couple slides.
Would I be able to do like AirPlay with this?
I
Oh, but
think
then
the
it's not-
easiest way would be to log in on your own laptop,
Okay, yeah, it's the things I use, I just brought my.
or just send me, do you want to send
Well, I
me?
can connect by HDMI, right?
Yeah, but it's better, so I've got my laptop here connected.
Unless I join the Zoom call with my
That-
iPad.
Well, or do you want to just send me, I could
I
share
can-
the
I can do-
slides
yeah,
from
sure.
my laptop.
It's a pretty heavy file, but it has some video. content.
Okay. Why don't we do that?
Sure.
Right,
Um,
right down.
And why don't you guys sit over there?
Okay.
Do you have your laptop, Michael?
I do, yeah.
Why don't you log in? Let's add you, because it's funny, like having an extra, we sort of did this, I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny, the HEC. Let me add you, Michael, to this. It's funny, like when I saw you sitting there, like, of course I have seen you and I emailed you, but I didn't put.
No,
two and
you're
two
all
together.
good. This was like a very last minute thing.
I
So
know.
Scott actually sent me
Yeah,
an email
yeah.
over the weekend.
What's your email address?
MDG
MDG.
136.
Okay, I'm adding you to this invite. And then I'll have you log in and you'll sort of face your lap, then basically you'll sort of be on there
Oh,
and you'll just join without sound.
Okay.
So you'll sort of be on that laptop. Everybody can sort of, and as people come in, and then we stream on Zoom and LinkedIn.
got it.
And
I grab my computer and go.
So my-
Yeah, come on back.
Yeah,
This
thank
is
you.
central.
I have, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've been using it for like our communications workshops
Yeah.
and physical diagnosis and I don't know, are you involved with the HoloLens stuff as well?
Yeah, so my role is, I'm the director of the SIM Center and also I'm the director of educational technology, so I do a bit of both.
which one do you want me to open up these things?
Make it fun then.
So do you know Jeff Ponsky?
Yes.
So he's like one of the people who helped, I think, start it many years ago.
Oh, this one.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a really heavy file. I just hope it doesn't get too mangled.
Where are you living in Cleveland?
I live downtown.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where? In front of Playhouse Square. which
Okay.
is-
Well, that new, what's it called? Like the
Lumen?
Lumen, yeah, it's got nice, it's a nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
And you moved here from
I moved
Taiwan?
here I was in Taipei before coming here, so I was, actually, it was, yesterday was my first anniversary.
Oh, cool, okay. Cool. How do you like it so far?
Oh, it's good, yeah.
And did you have any connection to Cleveland before?
No, not whatsoever. They just invited me to come for an interview.
Okay, cool.
That was that. Let me just make sure to do some, lots of this we don't need really. So, I mean, I thought maybe this could be interesting to frame. a
Sure.
little bit, this and then-
Well, also you could run, why don't I move? You could just run it. Let me share. I could share the screen.
I imagine the audience is pretty.
It's gonna be, we'll
large.
probably have a smaller in person
Yeah.
and then we'll have Zoom and then we have LinkedIn Live and then we capture a lot more people that way, so.
And we don't really need to talk too much about basics, right? Just get into,
Whatever.
like,
you-
I'm talking about like stuff like this or.
I mean, it's really up to you. I mean, we let the students sort of drive it.
Okay.
So,
Oh, why don't you take a look?
I'd
and
love
see
to
if-
defer to whatever you would like to
I
present.
can talk as in depth or as superficially as you like, so.
I mean, do you want to just run through these because we could sort of have sort of 10-15 minutes of slides and then
Well,
Michael can
Michael,
then.
what do you think?
That sounds good.
Okay,
Yeah.
why don't we do that? So
Yeah, I'll just lead some of those.
okay.
We don't want to do the whole thing, but.
So why don't you go onto I'll share, host, can you you need to let me share my screen, Megan.
Okay. I don't know why. Okay, got it.
And then why don't you?
Is it okay if I delete
Yeah.
some couple slides?
Yeah, do whatever you want. Yeah,
Because
you
I
can.
don't think people are interested in seeing. I gave a talk in Saudi
Okay.
a few weeks ago, so. Sorry, just 1 second. Let's get it on.
Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Michael. Oh, we met
We-
downstairs.
we-
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, good to see you
We'll see
again.
you when you come back from the trip.
I know, I left the next day for Barcelona again. What's your first name again?
Andy.
Andy, good to see you. Michael.
Michael.
Daniel.
Nice to meet you.
Good. Well, great. Glad to have you here. Yeah.
Fantastic topic, so why not just join in?
Come on. Join the party.
Hi.
Hi.
Messiah.
I'm Saya from Japan.
Oh, Andy, actually originally I come from China,
Oh,
where is just mine. Yeah,
yeah, nice to see you.
nice to meet you today.
Hello.
How are you?
You can sit up here if you want.
Yeah.
Look closer to
And
that.
how's where are you in the craziness of med school world now?
Yeah, we're about to wrap up our first year. So the block we're learning right now is like the foundations of medicine, cardiology, renal, and pulmonology.
Okay.
And so those three together are like the meat of internal medicine.
Okay.
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, it's.
What's
it's
the
really, really
summer? Do you just kind of continue through during the summer?
So every class before us has had the summer off.
Okay.
We're the first class that is doing research all summer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's a
you
new
guys got a
requirement.
real lucky group.
Yeah, we're the lucky ones.
Why don't you sit right next to me, Daniel, here? We'll have you guys sort of,
Okay.
and then you can just run
Yeah, well, because some of them will
it,
just.
and then
stay
you
there.
can just, then you can run the screen from here. That'd be easier. And then actually I'll put rename myself.
So Mike, are you interested in AI or?
I am. So I did a little bit of research before coming to medical school out in Boston at MGH, and we did some AI work with like reading MRIs. We tried to get them up to a level where they could like compete with a licensed radiologist. We did some work with like shoulder MRIs, trying to read these like very specific pathologies.
Mhm.
We ran into the problem that you just need a lot of data in order for them to like get good at what you're asking. So the question that we needed to ask may need to be broader for us to find something. Either that or we wait longer to get more scans that are on like in our books so we can train the model. But I'm very like, I'm just dipping my toes in, you know, I'm not like a computer science engineer, or I don't have a background in computer science, but I've worked with some pretty brilliant people who do have that background, and I'm just kind of interested from the periphery as much as I can as a clinician, so.
Okay, well, if you have interest, let me know. I'm putting together a couple of projects at the Sim Center. We're doing one in particular that I'm interested in, which is it's natural language processing that captures feedback conversations and creates action plans for improvement.
Okay.
So we're kind of looking to see how we can maybe start up some projects. that-
Yeah, I'm very
Okay,
interested.
cool.
Yeah,
Well, just let's exchange
Sure.
emails later and then I'll catch up with you.
Sounds great.
A few more minutes. I don't know if Andy, you want to introduce yourself to Daniel and everybody else.
Yeah, for sure. Instead of you guys, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here, joining the fantastic topic, AI, medical research field, right? So first thing first, my name is Andy, a PhD. You can say the upcoming the operational managers and we're the senior research associate in some so, but those titles that no matter. Very interested in the AI-driven drug discovery and what are we gonna do with that. I'm also in the meantime a research translational fellow, like Stacey know that. So basically the research, basically the job for us is trying to advocate for the transition from the basic science into the clinical settings and etc. So great opportunity and excited to learn more from you guys. If it's possible, I would like to participate in something you just described to Michael as well.
Sure. Wait, the card, you can just get in touch by email, just follow up.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're trying to develop a couple different things. I think it's
Sorry.
just
That's okay.
the case, so I'm struggling to get funding and stuff, so.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you so much. I might take it back and you ask me hard questions.
Mine is here.
Great. And besides, just maybe reintroduce yourself. Just, I know you
Sure.
met Daniel, Mike, but just us with some new people in as well.
Hello, I'm Sarah Matsura from Japan. I'm the graduate weatherhead, but after that, I got a medical school in Japan. So I am MBA and MD, and my specialty is psychosomatic internal medicine. I believe that specialty belongs to the psychiatry in the United States, but in Japan, it's kind of an independent area. And I started my own business 5 years ago. It's a digital therapy company, and we are soon to the government approval as a medical device. And I'm Veale DX, and I'm just kind of the idea that AI and combine with the digital therapies in treatment area, and that'll be a great solution for mental illnesses. So I happened to be here, and it's so glad to be here. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Hey, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Me?
Yeah, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Jerry Kokonos. I'm a senior statistics major doing a campus-wide survey on student, sorry, I'm a little tired. I'm a senior I'm a senior statistics major doing a campus-wide IRB survey on sustainability literacy, the use of AI in academia, and then also like the ethical implications of AI. And so, yeah, I'm kind of just wanting to broaden my education on other topics. Yeah, but that sounds amazing what you're doing. That's,
Really cool.
yeah, that's awesome.
Hi, my name is Nehal. I'm second year PhD student in Department of Macromolecular Science and Engineering. I'm recently working, so our group works on simulation as well as experiment. So we are doing dissipative particle dynamic simulation on grafted polymers, bottle brush polymers. And I'm interested in AI. I want to use it for my system somehow. And we are also working on studying the, understanding the properties of gold nanorods using the dynamic light scattering technique and the neutron scattering technique instead of doing TEM and so. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. And this is the first time I'm attending. I'm actually using 6th floor of ThinkBox.
Nice, welcome.
Welcome. Well, we have a couple more folks joining. Megan's going to launch the live stream and say, hey, Mike, I didn't even know you were back from vacation until I was just texting with you. I don't know if you want to give a quick introduction.
Hi, I'm not. I'm actually in South Carolina, so sorry I can't be there in person. But I didn't want to miss this. So Mike Fisher, I'm an ERR working with Michael and Megan and others at the Veale Institute. So thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. I see. I don't know, Brian, if you're able to come off mute if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, Brian Barasek. I'm an assistant professor in the Center for Community Health Integration and looking forward to listening in.
Great. Well, great to connect. Thanks, Brian. Are we good to go, Megan? We are good. Well, welcome everyone. We are here on the 6th floor of ThinkBox. As I turn my laptop to Daniel, it's okay. I'll start off. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our executive director of the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship and a professor at Weatherhead. We have been working closely with Mike Fisher, who he mentioned is one of our entrepreneurs in residence, to curate a set of conversations on campus around AI, machine learning, and their applications. I think this is our 3rd or 4th one. I can't even remember. Time flies when we're having fun, Mike. Daniel, I know we had connected. You're relatively new to campus at Case, but you had done something on campus about the work that you're doing at the Simulation Center in the School of Medicine, and we were excited to have you be part of our session. All of our speaker series are moderated by students, and we're thrilled that Michael Galetta is sitting across from us here at ThinkBox, and will moderate today. These are very interactive for those. We have a few folks that are joining for the first time, so we'll want your questions for Daniel. Michael will have some. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel, and he's going to share his screen. He has a couple of slides that he wanted to share, and then we will just get into the dialogue. So with that, Daniel, I'll share our screen here and turn it over to you.
Awesome.
Make sure it's in slideshow mode. Okay.
There we go. Okay, everybody. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Daniel. I'm the Director of Simulation and Educational Technologies for the School of Medicine. As Mike mentioned, I've been here relatively recently. I moved here about a year ago. And before that, I had the pleasure of working in Asia for about 18 years. I was 15 years in Japan and 3 years in Taiwan. And I got very involved in technology for education. And part of that has included AI, as we're aware of that. So today I want to share a little bit about my experience, hear some comments from you, and hear from your thoughts about where artificial intelligence is going in this field, and hopefully start lots of exciting discussions for the future. So very briefly, I'd like to introduce just a couple of key concepts before we start, just to kind of frame the conversation, and then we can just move from there. So first of all, I mean, we're all right now in the middle of Industry 4.0. I mean, this is kind of our current state of development. And I mean, there's a couple of basic technologies that have supported this transformation in industry, right? And a couple of the ones that we've seen is general, for example, the Internet of Things, the use of networks like cyber physical systems. All of these have been the technologies supporting this Industry 4.0. But if we look at healthcare, things are a little bit different. There's a couple of different technologies that are not the regular ones that you encounter that are supporting this transformation in healthcare, right? And of course, artificial intelligence is one of those technologies. But at the same time, for example, the use of big data for decision-making, the Internet of Things, and this includes all the connected devices. As you know, your Apple Watch can now trace your heart rate and a series of other things. The use of precision robotics, and we've seen this a lot, for example, in surgical robotics and in training robotics, and extended reality, or XR, is another of those technologies that are kind of leading this transformation into healthcare industry 4.0. So this is kind of more or less where we are now. And today, since our topic is artificial intelligence, the idea is we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this particular field. If you have questions or anything, please feel free to unmute yourself or throw something on the chat, or Mike, please feel free to stop me if necessary. We can just kind of address those as we go. So, I mean, it's a good question, as we're seeing all these changes in healthcare, but, you know, is this really happening in education as well? Because, you know, we tend to be a little bit more traditional when it comes to the way we teach than the way we care for patients. This is, if we think about it, this is how I learned medicine. So I had to carry these heavy books in my backpack. There were 2 full volumes of Harrison that weighed about, I don't know, like maybe 20 pounds or something. And I had to carry that every day. And then I took notes in the notebook, and I saw these slides were physical slides, right? And when, you know, you mess something up, you have to do the whole thing again. So this is how I learned medicine. But what we're seeing today is a completely different learning environment. The tools of learning have completely transformed from what it was before. And this is what our medical students, and Mike, you're probably using several of these technologies yourself,
Yes.
right? So this is what we're using today. So, and there's always a gap, right? Because I learned with the old technology, and you know, as much as I try to stay on top of things, I might not be as familiar with all these technologies as, for example, you would, right? So these are there's some major changes happening in technology supporting education, and we need to kind of be familiar with those as we move forward. So just briefly note for those of you who might not be that familiar with AI is terribly confusing because it's so badly defined, right? So if we think about it, movies don't always show that the killer AI that annihilates the world, or we have all these different things that we see. Or for example, marketing, like most companies now say that their product has some type of AI, even though they are not sure how it works. So we're seeing all these kind of preconceptions of AI that people have as the completely self-thinking machine that will do anything. And that is unfortunately a little bit far from the truth, right? Humans and computers are different in the fact that what is easy for a computer is difficult for a human being. Like for something calculating a big number is something that we would have a lot of trouble with, but if we put that into a computer, it happens instantly. On the other hand, some decision making, it's very easy for humans, but difficult for machines, like picking a random object, right? We can just grab one and we found it, but for the machine deciding what object to pick would be quite complex. So again, it's kind of a different language, right? So we see something as hard, the computers see other things as hard, so it depends a little bit on the task. Again, there's several definitions of artificial intelligence, but there are two key factors, right, that tell us if something is AI or not AI. The first one is autonomy, right? So the fact that the system can perform its tasks without human guidance. So it can work by itself. And then the second element that we use to decide if something is an AI or not is adaptivity, the ability to learn from experience, right? So if those two elements are present, then we can say, yes, this is an AI. If one of those elements is not there, it's kind of in between. If none of the elements are there, then this is not AI. And I think a really good example is if you listen to music, like YouTube music or Spotify, or you know, the system works by itself and it will learn from your hearing preferences to suggest new songs that you might like. And that's a really good example of AI. Now, we're still at a very early stage with AI. We're more on what is a narrow artificial intelligence. So they're machines that are designed for specific tasks. We're still quite far away from the artificial general intelligence, which is machines that can do anything that a human can do, right? At the same time, we're all at a stage in what we call the weak AI side of things, right? There are machines that might seem intelligent, but it's a computer. It's an algorithm that's doing the thinking. And for example, ChatGPT is a really good example of that, right? So it looks like it's smart, but actually it's just a machine performing a task. It's not really self-conscious or it's not really intelligent. Okay, so basically AI, again, the idea is as we go through data input, data processing and outcomes, we assess those outcomes and then the AI adjusts the algorithm based on that experience. And that's more or less what we would look like as an AI. And again, we're in the early stages right now in which we're working with reactive machines, limited memory machines, and we still have not reached those higher levels of AI that I guess is the goal over there. Now, today I'm going to be focusing on a couple of specific areas that are more related to education. And just for our conversation today, let's keep in mind natural language processing, right, which is the ability of an AI to interact, to kind of bridge that interaction between humans and computers by understanding human language. And the other one is computer vision, right, which is the ability to interpret images or move motions and extract data from that and reach some kind of conclusion. So those are the two we're going to kind of hopefully dive a little bit more deeply into as we talk about skill assessment and education. And then finally, just a quick review. These are the key challenges that we found. And I think in medicine, there's several specific challenges that we're worried about, such as legal issues related to AI use. We're worried about the ethical concerns regarding AI, and also the black box problem is another serious issue, right? Which is basically doctors not understanding what AI is and how it works. So it's difficult to really kind of rely on something that you don't know how it operates. So these are some key elements that we're hopefully going to be looking at. And I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm an internal medicine specialist, but about 15 years ago, I kind of got bored of seeing patients, to be honest. And I said, well, you know what, I want to get into something a little bit more dynamic. And suddenly I found that kind of trifecta of medicine, education, and technology. And then that became the passion of my life. And that's why I've kind of gone down this path today. But there are two key elements that I like to think about when I think about AI for education, which is AI education and AI for education, which are slightly different and have different implications. AI education focuses on doctors knowing how to use AI. So that's kind of like the key element, right? Because if we are training, for example, Mike, you're probably going to be working independently in maybe about, what is that, maybe 8 years?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, somewhere around 8
Yeah.
years. So at that point, what you might encounter in the clinical space in terms of AI tools for caring for patients might be very different from what we have today. So it wouldn't make sense for us to try to train our medical students in this technology so that they're able to work with it in the future. So that's kind of one of the key objectives that we're looking into. And I think Watson has a lot to teach about that, right? So with Watson, I mean, it was a great idea, right? They thought, oh, we're going to get this AI that's going to give us all kinds of advice on how to treat our patients. But the problem is that, the AI didn't really understand patients. They didn't really understand a human being in its context and how that affects the provision of health. So at the end, we ended up with an AI that did not really meet the requirements and was met with a lot of distrust. And I think still today, the industry is trying to recover from that initial experience, right? And we're all a bit skeptical about the AI situation. And it's interesting because I find that here in North America, we're actually more skeptical about AI than they are in Asia. For example, I was working in Taiwan. I was the director of clinical training at a hospital, and we used all kinds of AIs for patient care. And it was in radiology, in oncology, and in general patient care. So it was very, very prevalent and used every day. Whether here we still don't see it as frequently as we see it in other places. Okay, so again, one of the key messages that came out of the Watson experience was, we need to really train users to understand how AI works and what are the limitations of AI when it comes to decision making or suggesting courses of action. And this is kind of an essential element. And this is not so different as other technologies we use in healthcare. For example, in healthcare, we use MRIs to produce images of the body. And part of our training as doctors is to understand the basic principles of how those images are produced. Right? So we do study how MRI works in order to justify these images, right? Or for example, a PCR test, again, we study how the PCR test works in order to do that. So why are we not doing the same with AI, right? For example, most universities right now, the medical curriculum does not have a compulsory AI element. It's not part of your, or unless, I'm not sure if you've encountered anything.
Not yet.
Yeah, but again, we're not teaching our doctors how to use AI, and they should at least understand the basic principles if we're expecting them to trust an AI to support them in providing clinical care. So again, it's a really important question. We need to be training people on how to do this. Now, the other side of things is AI for education, which means how can we use AI to improve the learning process or the way we're training people? And that's another really, really exciting area that I think, at least I'm very passionate about. And AI brings us closer to the dream of the adaptive learning curriculum, right? In which we have a match between the way people learn individually, the curriculum that they're engaging with, and the teaching methods that are involved in training these people, right? And these, the AI brings closer the idea of being able to customize this to every single learner, because you learn in a very different way than I learn, right? Maybe you like watching videos, I like reading a book. There are different ways of learning, and AI allows us, to really try to customize the way we're delivering education. And I think it's really interesting to see what it's going to be doing in that role there. Other important things, one is AI, again, we need to have a clear understanding of learning, right? We need to use learning analytics to kind of better understand the way we're working with our students. And I'll show you some examples of this in a minute. And then the other thing is AI can provide a lot of technological support. And that from what you're mentioning, for example, we were just talking about this, the use of AI and VR together to provide certain results or to be able to analyze certain conditions. Again, it's very exciting. AI with robotics, again, another very, very exciting combination. So again, we're looking to see how AI is going to integrate with other technologies to really transform the way we're looking at things. Now, this is kind of one of my favorite topics in education is, are human beings good at measuring other people's performance, right? And if we think about this, for example, if we look at, we use something called inter-rater reliability to calculate this. And it means if I score somebody and you score somebody, does that match or not, right? Usually, if it's 1, it means that we completely agree on performance. If it's 0, it means we completely disagree with that performance measurement. Now, the interesting thing is, for example, we look at a multiple choice test. The inter-rater reliability is really high because we select 1 of 5 answers or 6 answers or 4 answers. So again, it's a very good measurement tool if you're trying to remember to evaluate recall. And that's why, for example, still the USMLE exam, the licensing exam for medicine is a multiple choice test. Right. On the other hand, what we find is that when we use people to look at somebody and assess their performance, the inter-rater reliability is about 0.4, which is it's pretty low, right, if we think about that. And why is it so low? Well, because we have preconceptions or notions that affect our judgment, right? And some of these are clear, some of them are less clear, but all of these things affect us. For example, whether we like the person we're assessing or not. It could be whether we observed at the right time or not. It could be whether we were looking for the right things when we were assessing somebody. So again, these are really complex. So when we're talking about a clinical skill, right? For example, talking to a patient or listening to somebody's heart or being able to identify a skin lesion, right? There's several different parts to the skill. One, there's a cognitive side. So you need to have knowledge in that field in order to be able to do it. But then there's the behavioral side. So you need to have certain behaviors that are going to support you to perform. For example, I know washing your hands. Right? These are behaviors that would really translate to better patient care. And then the other part is the actual psychomotor action of doing something. Right? So if you're listening to somebody's heart, you're going to put on your stethoscope. You're going to listen on the right spot, apply the right amount of pressure on the patient's chest. Right? These are motor tasks that have to come together. So for a clinical skill to be functional, these 3 elements need to be in place. And some of them are relatively easy to measure. For example, cognitive skills can be measured with a multiple choice test, but behavioral skills and psychomotor skills are not that easy, right? There's so many variables and factors that the human mind has trouble really processing all that data to come to a clear conclusion. So this is where AI really kind of had that little place to step in and help us understand better what's going on, understanding behaviors and understanding actions. A couple of examples of tools that are currently being used for AI when we talk about learning and assessment. One is, for example, the ability to analyze performance and develop a customized learning plan. So for example, we were using computer vision to watch somebody suture. And based on those images, the system can suggest, hey, your stitches are too deep. You should go a little bit more shallow. They should be a little bit tighter. They're not evenly distributed, right? So the AI is capable of providing feedback of these very small things that would be difficult for a human to perceive altogether. Right? The other part is, again, keeping track of feedback and performance data. Has everybody received feedback at some point in your life? Yeah, we get feedback all the time, right? And the thing is, I want you to think, when you have a feedback conversation with somebody, how much of that conversation do you think you retain?
15%.
15%? Yeah, so can we all agree, it's not a very high percentage, right? I mean, we tend to forget most things that people say, right? So again, being able to take a feedback conversation, convert it into a text format, analyze that text for themes or topics, and then use that information to create a list of things that you need to improve on, or a list of different things. You have a
Yeah,
comment?
so I can understand how that'd be great for like something like clustering algorithms, but what about some of the things about like just being human, like inherently that machines wouldn't really understand, like smell, something like that, are just so inherently part of being human, like how would we quantify that? Like how are some of these things like important to address, especially in like the health field?
That's a really good question, and unfortunately, I don't think I have a very good answer for that. Like the human brain and its connection to the senses is incredibly complex, and I think still we don't understand well how that thing works, right? There's still so much about the brain we don't know about how it interacts with senses, so I think we need to figure out a couple of things before we expect the AI to be able to understand it as well. One of the key things was the construction of AI is that, you know, we're based, a lot of it is based on the way we think. So if we do not completely or fully understand the way it works in us, it's really hard for us to replicate that in the computer system. But I think eventually that's the final goal, right? To really kind of AI to reach a level of complexity in which it will be able to understand the way we operate.
There are some tools that are coming out in industry use for feedback and assessment. Work Humans, one of the organizations or companies that have tools, and they're looking at written material. So they'll take all your emails and stuff and allow you to sit down with an employee and say, your tone, you know, in all of your emails is erring to the side of being, you know, too big of an ego or appearing frustrated, or your tone is too complacent, you know, and it's a little big brother, but there's also a part of it that says it's just a tool, right? It isn't the only thing you're going to do, but in performance review, you can see the things you can't see, because as a supervisor, right, if I'm going to give feedback to someone, I can only give feedback on what I've observed. I can hear feedback from some others, but then there's that gray area in between the things I can't see, and it was an attempt to get to some of that. So I don't know where that's all going to end up in medicine, but it's interesting that you're seeing traction in some of that now as a way to improve human resources, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's extremely exciting. The thing is also we run into barriers, right? What happens if the person writing those emails is not a native English speaker?
Right, exactly.
Is it going to
Exactly.
misinterpret their intention? Is it going to think that they're aggressive or hostile just because they don't speak the same way? And yeah, I mean, it was computers. I mean, it's all about what you give as training data is going to determine your output, right?
Yes.
So, and that's where we need to be really careful with algorithm bias, because it's very easy to create an error just because we don't understand or we don't have enough data to really train the system.
Well,
Yeah.
you're dealing with such large, you know, data sets. I mean, it's always been the rule, garbage in, garbage out. When you're looking at, I used to program a gazillion years ago, and I thought about a career in AI. It just wasn't there yet. And I didn't want to do the research. I wanted to do the application. But, you know, when you're looking at garbage in, garbage out, and you've got these ginormous data lakes, it's really hard to identify where that data can be corrupt and or skewed.
And it's interesting because, you know, as humans, we also run into the same problems, right? We judge people based on our own experiences or perceptions, right? And that's where we make big mistakes. A couple of years ago, I was at a workshop, and we were.
Can I stop sharing this?
Yes, please. And we were talking about how do we assess residents? So for those of you who are not in the medical field, a resident is a doctor who specializes in a particular field. So for example, I don't know, maybe like 4 years time, you're starting your residency.
Right.
And we need to assess these residents, and we use multiple types of data to do that. We use patient feedback, we have feedback from other healthcare professionals. They take board examinations that also provide some data there. We do a structured observation of clinical skills, which also we use. And we were sitting around this table, they gave us this file for a mock resident, not a real person, but, and it was, I don't know, maybe a big stack of paper with all this data. And they put that on the table and say, okay, let us know if you think this person should graduate or not. So a group of us, and we were all, I mean, we've been doing this for years and years and years.
Right.
We started digging into that data. And it's really interesting how some people fixated on the one negative comment and completely ignored a lot of the positive comments that were there. Or maybe some people focused on a certain test score and not the feedback that was being. So as humans, we are flawed assessors, right? And I think AI has a huge role in processing all this data and transforming it in a way in which we can understand it. Right, so I think that's another really, really exciting field that we definitely could think about.
Yeah, as a follow-up, do you feel like there is a way to use AI to get an objective assessment of these kinds of things? Or do you think that the task in and of itself is just, it's challenging to compare humans to other human beings?
Well, I think, look, it's the amount of factors that can affect somebody's performance are so great that I think we will never be able to take into account every single one. Like, we're never going to have 100% accurate measurement of somebody's performance, because just I don't know, you didn't drink your coffee that morning, your performance is going to be affected, right? Or that, I don't know, you forgot to turn off your light or whatever, and then you didn't sleep well. It's gonna, so there's so many factors that can affect performance. It's really difficult to do it, but the question is, we don't really need perfect, but what we need is better than now. So I guess the question is AI capable of helping us make better decisions when it comes to assessing somebody? And I think the answer is probably yes, right? It's a lot easier to look at processed information than raw data. Like, for example, if you see an infographic, it's a lot easier to assimilate concepts. And I think the idea behind using AI to assess is not really to remove humans from assessment, but to support them in order to make a better decision. So I think that's kind of one area, but it doesn't really answer your question. But I think, you know, we live in an imperfect world, and I think what we're looking for is improving what we're doing. And if technology is going to allow us to do that, then I think it's a very welcome addition.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is as we kind of progress through our medical training, I mean, I'm in the medical field, so I'm biased, so forgive me if there are people listening who are not. But as we go through, there are various opportunities for distinguishment or, you know, honors, or like we have the society, this AOA, Alpha Omega Alpha society, that only like a certain percentage of people can get. And it's almost entirely made on a subjective evaluation from your preceptors, right? And if there's like interrelated reliability of 0.4, you know, that raises a lot of questions on like, is that task something that, you know, AI could potentially assist with, or is it something that is just an impossible task? I don't know, those are discussions we're having like at our med school right now, because we suspended our chapter due to concerns over bias and, you know, some social justice movements and things like that. So I'm thinking about potentially re-implementing, and if there's a way to do so in a fair way, and if AI can help with that, that's kind of where I'm going with it. So
yeah, well, I think that's a really valid point, and I think part of the problem is like we're trying to measure things that are really difficult to measure. That's kind of the biggest challenge. For example, okay, Mike, I'll just share. So Mike did a communications workshop at the simulation center where I work, and it's really interesting because so they come in and they're facing a patient, and let's say you have to tell that patient that they have cancer and they will not live much longer, right? And we observe them interacting with this patient, we videotape it, we listen to it, but can we really honestly measure if this was good or not. Like, it's really difficult, right? For example, it depends on the patient. Some patients react better to one thing to another. Depends on your own personality, right? You know, some people are very chatty. They like, oh yes, you're gonna be okay. And other people are a little bit more less expressive. And so there's so many different factors that it's really hard for us to say, oh yes, this was good and no, this wasn't. Especially when we're basing everything on a 5-minute conversation that happened in a completely artificial environment. So I think it's such a ginormous task to really be able to do that. And I guess the question is really, should we really be doing this?
Right.
Like, should we be really saying, hey, you know what, you were better than him because you got a higher score in this, or when we have imperfect assessment systems. So,
Exactly.
but I think what we're looking at, and this is something where we're looking data to support, is, you know, people learn differently. Like, there's a big question right now in the US, should medical school last 4 years? Right. Well, I mean, sometimes there are people who spend 4 years in medical school, and you look at them, and they're not really ready to engage in patient care. I wasn't. I mean, I could have used a little bit more help before I started. On the other hand, we have people who are able to learn very, very quickly, right? And might be able, in 3 years, they might be able to accomplish all the goals that they had set out for the 4 years. So, I mean, it really brings a lot of things into question. And if AI is an avenue to support, to provide that supporting data for us to understand, hey, you know, you should do 1 more year of training, or you're ready to go out, get out of here and save yourself some money, right?
Right.
So again, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and there's a lot to look at in that particular area. I see some hands up. Mike?
Hey, Daniel, thank you for this again. So we talked a little bit about data in and data out, and, you know, the garbage in, garbage out. But in generative AI, a lot of artists and authors have been bringing up intellectual property issues with that use of data for training. And I was wondering if you've heard of any of these issues within, you know, the medical community, or if you've thought about or have thoughts on the concerns about using, you know, maybe some doctor has the preferred approach to something, whether it's, you know, a bedside manner or an actual procedure, and that's their intellectual property. Are they concerned about using that to train these models that then get, you know, used and they get no benefit from that?
That's a really good question, Mike. And I think the problem is sometimes in medicine, the data is not as clear as it is in other fields. Like, for example, if you think about art and you have a painting, that's a very clear thing. But for example, if we were thinking of a surgeon, right, the psychomotor technique of a surgeon performing a surgery, then things are a little bit less clear in that area. In medicine, there are 2 basic elements when we're looking at skills. There is proficiency, right? The ability to do the skill properly. And then there's efficiency, the ability to do the skill quickly, right? And these 2 kind of come together as people develop their skills. Initially, if we think of a surgeon, initially surgeons start off focusing on proficiency, right? On doing the procedure properly. Right. And then as they become better at it, they start looking for shortcuts or ways to work more efficiently, or ways to manipulate less tissue when you're doing a surgery. Right? And it's really interesting because initial applications of AI that were meant to assess surgeons, the AI actually scored the experienced surgeons very poorly because they were not doing the full movement. So I guess, I mean, in terms of intellectual property, I don't think really you can patent your surgical technique. I've never heard of that. I imagine somebody must have tried at some point, but so I'm not sure we have that same concern. But I mean, there are other areas in which it might affect, right? Just to give you an example, now that you're mentioning about generative AIs, such as ChatGPT, one of the basic methodologies for learning medicine is problem-based learning. And in problem-based learning, what you do is you have a patient case and you provide students with questions. And these are usually very open-ended questions And then the students take these questions and they go search for the data or the answers to this. And knowledge is generated by looking for information and extracting the key information to answer a specific question. That's the teaching methodology. Now, I can take that exact same question and I can put it inside a generative AI, such as ChatGPT, and get a complete answer, right? And not only that, that answer is unique and cannot be detected by plagiarism software. So then this really kind of brings us to rethink things like, so does, if people can do this, there are two trains of thought here. One is, oh, let's ban AI, right? And of course, this is, it's like saying, like people a few years ago were trying to ban the internet. If you're a little bit older, you probably remember that. So that's one way that obviously is not going to work. On the other hand, is it maybe time to start transforming the way we are teaching people? Right? Is it maybe a time to start integrating these tools into the learning process? And I think that's the real answers on that side of things. So I'm kind of really excited. I know right now everybody's lamenting ChatGPT and oh my God, it's the end of education. But I actually think that we will emerge better because of it. And it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to really modernize the way we're doing things. Sorry, that was a very,
Thank
very
you.
long
No,
answer.
that was great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Quick question. based
Sure.
on Literally what you just said. So what are some ways that you want to see Case Western integrate AI into its undergraduate academic program?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, yeah, there's several ways in which we could do this. One of them is, I would love to be able to really understand better, for example, things such as communication skills, right? Because when you first go into medicine, you think it's all about the science, but you know what? At the end, you realize it's all about talking to people, right? And actually, getting them to trust you in a very short period of time. And I think we do a very poor job at not only teaching but evaluating those skills. And I think I would like to see AI have a more active role in helping us identify things that we might be doing unconsciously that are affecting the way we communicate with others, right? And this can, for example, I'm not sure if you've ever had experience of talking to somebody who makes you feel uncomfortable. Like I remember once I was talking to somebody and they kept playing with their pen, and clicking and opening, and it was driving me nuts to the point in which I did not listen to what this person was saying because I was fixated on that pen. Right? So there are many small things that we do like this that could impact the way we're communicating. And I think if AI is able to give us a better understanding of not only what language did you use, but what was your body language saying? What was your posture while you were communicating? Did you look at the person in the eyes when you were telling them that they were going to die? Right? And I'm very excited about that area. That's something that I think there's a lot to do.
You said that was the first one.
That's the first one,
second
yeah. For example, the other thing is training of skills. Like, for example, I think when you're a medical student, one of the overwhelming things is that there's so many things you need to be able to do properly, because after 2 years, guess what? You're working as a real patient and you will have to perform many of these tasks on a human being, right? And right now it's great because we have simulation centers where you can kind of get a head start. I didn't have one. I learned how to do things on real patients, and I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think it's terrible. Can you imagine being the patient of a surgeon on his first surgery? No thanks, right? So we really don't want to do that, but I think definitely that skill training is another area, right? Can we see people and give them feedback on how to improve? And if that was somehow automated, right? Because one of the big problems we have is we don't have enough teachers, right? It's really hard to grab a busy clinician and say, hey, come over here to this classroom and teach people how to do a skill. And what ends up happening is we end up with large groups of students with very few instructors. And these skills many times require like that one-on-one support in order for you to really acquire the proper skills. So can some of that be automated? That's a great question as well. Maybe AI can be analyzing the way you're doing things and giving you tips and hints and kind of like coaching you towards improving your skills. So these are all interesting things. I know, Mike, what do you think? You're the one going through this right now.
Yeah, well, I have a couple thoughts based on everything that you've been saying. The first one is just thinking about how we are evaluated in our comm workshops right now, which is like you have a checklist. And it's like, did you say your name when you came in? Yes. Did you wash your hands? Yeah. Like, and there are so many different ways that you could walk into a room and introduce yourself. And yet all we see is like, if you just said the word, you get a completes. Rather than like, what was your, like we're saying, what's your tone? How do you actually interact with the patient? Do you look at them? It's interesting if we can get to a level where we actually do provide some of that deeper feedback and makes us a little bit more human. I think that would be a great application. Following up on what you're saying about needing more teachers, and specifically, I'm thinking needing more qualified world-class teachers, right? The ones that are probably the busiest, who aren't going to be spending the time with students because they're busy. Do you think that there's an opportunity in the future where, say, we can develop an algorithm based on the data of a very elite select group of, say, surgeons in a specific field, and then using their habits and broadcasting that and through algorithms to various schools across the country? And then if that is a possibility, where does intellectual property and like the rights of that algorithm come into play? Because it comes from like these people who have spent hours in their lives mastering their skills.
I think that's an awesome question. And again, I think these are the ethical issues that sometimes we need to consider, because I mean, this is a really good example. We're training a system based on the performance of surgeons who have acquired those skills through decades of practice, right? And suddenly we're making use of that to create a model that is going to be able to share that information, or hopefully at least help others reach that level. And should there be some recognition for that? But then at the same time, for example, we look at the way we use big data. Hey, we're taking patients' outcomes and their physiological response to treatments, and to kind of process that information and make bigger decisions. So, I mean, should there be some ownership of that data? So should it be rewarded for?
Where's that line?
Yeah, so I mean, they're really deep questions that I think we still don't have answers to. And who was doing ethics? Oh, great. Do you have some thoughts?
Wait,
on
like professionally or?
like ethics of that?
Yeah, well, actually, this was really quick. What you were saying earlier about like having like people that have like done the skilled surgeries and stuff. I think one interesting thing would be like for students that are like doing their first operation or something, like you could even have like kind of like a haptic feedback, or like if they're getting close to like an internal organ and they just don't know, or something like being like vibration,
A
like
shock.
yeah, where it's like one of those things where it's not like someone over your shoulder is like, hey, watch out, because then now the person who's being operated on is like, oh my god, like like that can start a chain reaction. You could have something like a non-verbal cue of like, hey, you're getting like a little close, like be careful. But yeah, from an ethical standpoint, I guess one question I had as well was, how would you tell professors who are concerned over the use of AI programs like ChatGPT being abused by students? In terms of the ethical part of that would be just like cheating, I guess. But just I guess in general for ethical AI, that's just like a whole, that I think is like a class that should be taught. That should be like possibly like a class that should be taught your freshman year. Like doesn't have to be like even a class that you're like graded on, so even to say, but like it's just like we're at the point now where it's like it's getting smart really fast. And if we just kind of bury our heads in the sand, it's going to be a disaster, not just for like the school, but I mean just like society as a whole. Like that's my thoughts on it.
That's a really good point. And actually, I would go even beyond that. I mean, training young people to interact with technology is an easy thing. Try training those older guys to so how do we get the faculty or to accept ChatGPT as a solution? I mean, for example, the use of calculators for math, right? That's a great question.
Yeah.
So for example, there were so many issues about, oh, you should not use calculators for math, and you should memorize this, and then in the future, you won't have a calculator, which I actually have one in my pocket every day of my life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've never really had to use any of that math that I had to memorize, and I probably don't even remember it anymore, right? So then again, it's not about shying away and banning technology. It's about really modifying the way we're doing things to really take advantages of this because ChatGPT has a lot to offer. I mean, I've developed test items that were really good using ChatGPT, right? And what if we could generate all these questions that you can study for your boards, or you can prepare for the USMLE, right? Was randomly generated questions. And so I think there's a lot there that we need to consider, but I think it's not just educating students, it's educating everybody.
Question about the AI application in psychiatry area. And unlike the surgeon type of area, there's not so much clear cut objective learning kind of things. And I understand that in psychiatry, the what should I say? It's kind of DSM-5. That's not the objective, strictly speaking. It's not the a little bit subjective part of the diagnosis step. So I think that maybe AI could be some sort of contribution to that, the process of more seeable or objectively. Just I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of potential. Like, I mean, I think, for example, all these classifications we have of mental health disorders, they're really flawed. I mean, when you're working in practice and you're seeing a patient, nobody matches the criteria. Like that, it was so frustrating. Oh yeah, they look like they're depressed, but they don't have this particular item from the classification, so I can't diagnose them as being depressed because I don't. So it's difficult. These things, I don't think they work that well to begin with. Sorry, psychiatrists, but I don't think they're that effective in the first place. So if AI is able to, I don't know, interact with you and diagnose you based on the way you answered questions or communicated, maybe it's better than what we do.
Yeah, maybe it could be the standardized.
Yeah. I mean, with psychiatrists, the best psychiatrists are actually the older ones who have seen more people. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And it's not because they memorized the classifications, because they've seen so many people with these disorders that they're very easily able to identify them. And sometimes they don't match the criteria, but they're able to treat them well, right? So it's a really good point, and I think definitely a lot to explore in that too.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have a quick question. So you mentioned communication a lot, and perhaps a field that doesn't communicate with patients as much as others is radiology. And you mentioned that in your work in Taiwan with other clinicians. So AI used to like identify issues in scans, calculate volumes, breast nodules, lung nodules, everything is obviously meant to increase efficiency. However, like a rate limiting aspect of that is liabilities. So like a radiologist, has to manually check a scan to make sure that the AI is correct. At what point, if there is a point, would AI be perfect enough for that rate limiting aspect?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is driven by medical legal issues, right? I think the threshold is how much can you do without getting sued or without getting in legal trouble for doing that. I think what happens in North America in this field is very different from what's happening in other places. Here, the medical legal system is pretty strict, right? But for example, like I worked in Japan for a long time, and I mean, it's very rare for a physician to get sued. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's relatively rare in Japan. And I think that makes it easier to adopt these technologies into practice. And that's, I think, something that we're seeing in Asia right now. And like from my experience in Taiwan, like AI is everywhere now in healthcare. Like, and people are really delegating things. I'm not sure if it's always good or not, because I mean, it depends a lot on the quality of the algorithm. And as you were mentioning, garbage in, garbage out. But I mean, I think at some point we need to really reassess the way we're measuring at what point AI can take over. Because imagine if you're a radiologist and you work with an AI that you check the results of that AI, and you check, I don't know, 100 X-rays a day, and they're all correctly diagnosed by the AI. At what point can we really hey, let the AI do it. I think at some point, the evolution of that will be that being able to get the AI to notice when it's not sure of something, right? To kind of flag something that is irregular within the data that it's worked with before, and then use radiologists to efficiently check those things that are not as clear, instead of all the extra. But I think it's a great question, and again, it all goes back down to the ethics of it. Like, at what point is it safe to allow the AI to really make decisions for us or not?
Reminds me of self-driving cars.
That's a really good, I think it's very similar, actually.
Maybe the last question, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. Very broad view now, I just want to know you guys, what the current status in terms of the new, projects you are still working on close to campus, along with clinic, or UH, what specific projects you think we are able to participate in, or that you think is very interesting to us?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunities to develop things. One is, I think AI development is very siloed, right? So for example, like when a hospital does something and they're not that happy to share with others, and because they've invested a lot of money into it. So right now, one of the things that I find challenging is everybody seems to be doing their own thing, and there's not much consensus. And I think OpenAI is a great example of how collaboration can happen and produce something that is worth producing. Because I mean, AI, a lot of the quality of the AI depends on how much quality data you use to train the algorithm. And if you're siloed, then the amount of that data is going to be much lower than if you're part of a bigger group. So I think one is we need to find bigger ways to collaborate in development of these projects. But I think, for example, here in Case Western, we are looking at developing solutions. The problem is sometimes funding innovation is really challenging, because in universities, we fund research, but not all innovation is research. Right. So, and I think, for example, the Think Box is a really cool space because you guys are actually financing innovation.
Professor Goldberg is here. That is why we in great need of him, the people like him, to be around to really guide us how to really develop some innovations from all those things we learn from science or from the technology, from the engineering. Yeah, that's so how if there are any more projects, with your reach, I think that's something maybe we have more personal experience to get out of. So I think that will benefit us to learn more, upfront experience.
Yeah. I mean, as far as us as an institution here at Case Western, I think we need to have a common resource.
Yeah.
Because one of the things, so I was working on this NLP project that I'm excited about. I had to contact so many people separately to kind of even have a notion of what to do or how to move forward with it. I think we need like a common AI center where we have experts, we have content experts coming from the schools, with AI experts that are locally there, and resources available for development. And I think that's the key to really moving forward with this, is to have that kind of centralized place where we can all go and do these things together.
Good. Well, good. That's a good way. Good last question, Andy. And Daniel, thank you so much for joining. Mike, thanks for moderating 2 weeks in a row. Did a great job. This one's obviously close to home. And I think this set of conversations that we're having with folks, we're exploring things in dental medicine, political science, the humanities and social sciences, because the reach of AI is throughout. And I'm also, and I don't know everybody who's on the Zoom or on LinkedIn, but even in this room today, we're representing, whether it's an alum based in Japan or folks across our campus in our school of medicine or engineering. We're bringing together some interesting folks and hopefully these conversations can go past today. Just to do a little preview of some upcoming events tomorrow, at 4:30 p.m. Peg Fitzgerald who was just in ThinkBox a few minutes ago, who's an alum of our School of Nursing, is going to be speaking, and I lost my little event page in 1 second. It's at 4:30 p.m. tomorrow, and the topic is, the difference between an entrepreneur and entrepreneur. So Peg's a really wonderful innovator in the nursing space. That'll be at 4:30 p.m. At the Health Education Campus, so in Daniel's home building, and we'll also be on Zoom and on LinkedIn. And then next week, actually, Jazal Sekali from as a graduate of our School of Dentistry will be speaking about, as part of our speaker series, about filling a gap in your industry by starting a new company. So check our website and LinkedIn page for upcoming events. And Mike Fisher, look forward to working with you. I know we've got a couple ones in the pipeline on our AR series. So Mike and Daniel, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining, and we will see you all again soon. That was fun.